morning, how are you? Julien, si jamais un lutrin qui traîne à quelque part, celle-là, All right. So yesterday I told you a couple of things about myself. And today I want to find out a couple of things about you guys. So some of you I've met before, others I haven't at all. So, let's see how this will work. That's okay. It's good. Au moins, it doesn't lean forward, so I'm not worried about losing it. Maybe we can take up an offering for a new... So as I was mentioning yesterday, Pastor Catch the Fire in Montreal, and my wife should be here Friday. She's coming in for a meeting tomorrow afternoon, so you get to meet my wife on Friday. And we have 3 children. We have Matthew, who's 26, and he's doing his master's in theology at Concordia University in Montreal. A daughter, Sarah, 25, who just made us grandparents a month ago. So I'm Grandpa Gerry now. And our daughter, Rochelle, who's 19, and she's in interior design. So that's our family, and we have lots of fun. The cool thing about being a father-in-law to a new son-in-law is there's a whole set of relationships that, until you enter into a new relationship, you don't know how that's going to work. And so there's all this new working out of relationships. And, I'm 56 now, and I can tell you that life is all about relationships. And it's really not going to matter what your house looks like or your car looks like or anything else you've got on your CV when you finish your life. All that's going to matter is, do you know how to love? That's all that's going to matter. That's all that's going to matter. If Jesus said that the greatest and highest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself, well, that's really all that it counts. And at the end of your life, it's all about, do I know how to love? Have I learned how to love? Excuse me. I forgot to turn off my phone. All right. So today we're going to just take a couple of minutes and I'm going to write down your name as you tell me what your name is. And I want you to tell me in 30 seconds or less what you'd like to do as ministry for the Lord. I'm not talking maybe full-time ministry, but maybe you do kind of feel called to full-time ministry. But if you could, be involved in some kind of ministry for God, what would it be? What would you like to really be involved in? You could see yourself digging into that. Okay? So start over here, and I'm writing your names down because I hope I'm going to get a chance this week to pray for you. I'm really going to try and do that. So, I mean, not like here we're going to pray, but I mean when I'm out and about this week. Just take some time and pray for you guys, okay? So let's start here.
My name is Therese.
Therese? Oh, yeah, sorry. And where are you from?
I'm from Sweden.
Sweden?
And I have head for worship.
Okay.
Worship music and also like counseling.
Okay. Great.
I'm Becca. I'm from the Channel Islands.
From where?
Channel Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, what I think I want to do is worship and kind of I just want to raise up people to be worshippers and like kind of train and equip people in worship.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have people from the worship module here this week, right?
Yeah.
As well. Okay. All right.
My name is Lisa, and I'm from Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as ministry goes, yeah, also love worshiping and just bringing different art forms to worship as well as like what other people can do, not just me. And and I love to, or I'm hoping to work with homeless people or the less fortunate in some way.
Okay. Great.
30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Me? Okay. I'm Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
I am from Michigan in the U.S. I feel like I've had prophetic words and things that I really also feel passionate about worship and music, and then leadership in maybe over youth, and then maybe in the business realm, and then maybe even like starting churches and stuff and traveling.
Okay. All right. Name, where you come from, and what you feel you'd like to be involved in ministry.
Well, Kendry and Dua. People call me Ken.
Ken?
From north of Winnipeg in Manitoba,
Mm-hmm.
where Lisa's from, actually.
Are you from the same place?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, I've been doing worship music for a while now. I really feel passionate about it, and I feel called to it. I don't know to what extent, but yeah, my prophecy was about leadership and evangelism. So, yeah, seeing how those two might work together. I definitely, right now, I feel really called to ministry rather than to working like what I was doing before, and then doing just little ministry on the side. But I feel more called to full time right now.
All right. Down the back.
I'm Andy, also from the Channel Islands. Yeah, I enjoy worship leading and I'd like to carry on doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm Elko.
Sorry?
I'm Elko.
EELCO.
Yeah, from Holland.
Whereabouts? Whereabouts in Holland?
In the middle part, it's near Rotterdam.
Okay.
I've got a heart for build identities in people, give them hope again. Like yesterday we did like followers, like the less fortunate people, like
Mm-hmm.
they don't have love. And I've really got a heart for those people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great.
I'm Blake from Winnipeg. Worship is fun. I don't know, like I like the idea of like kind of like how IHOP is and stuff, and like more of our worship and stuff. I'd like to do like
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
You ever been down to IHOP?
No.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. Okay. Let's go over here.
My name is Chelsea Brown. I'm from New York City. me, I'm thinking. And then I also felt called in ministry, so I was thinking, I'm praying. I think God will want me to do like Father Heart ministry, like in the Black community. So it's been like something that's been on my heart. So yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. Great. Hi.
Hi, my name's Heather, and
Mhm.
I'm from Alston, Ontario.
Alliston?
Alston, yeah. I'm still figuring all of this out. But one thing I've come to learn that I like to do is I just really like to just share with people and kind of write and explain to people what God's been showing me in my life and in His Word. And what I really like to do is go into medicine and healthcare and just bring God's love there. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore, but that's what I really like to do.
Okay. So you like to be a healthcare professional?
Yeah.
All right.
My name's Talia.
Talia?
Talia.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come all the way from Toronto.
Mm.
I really have no idea what I am called to do yet.
Okay.
However, I do enjoy worship, but I don't think that's all that I'm going to be doing. I think I want to plant churches, but I'm also really interested in kind of the business world and just kind of bringing godly morals and values and such to the business world. But I also like healthcare. I don't know, but let's just say I'm open to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm Nick. I'm from the Cree Nation of Nemska, and
Where from? Where about?
Nemska, Cree Nation, northern Quebec.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like I'm from Canada. And the Cree.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to do if you're doing ministry for God?
Just really like share the Father's heart and
Okay.
that sort of thing, and worship.
Great. Hi.
Hey, Julia,
How-
Tuulia, and I'm from Finland.
Uh-huh.
And I have a heart for people, like passion for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to help like broken people.
Okay.
And there's like stuff about evangelism and stuff like that in my heart. So just like I have a huge heart for people.
Okay. Right. Yeah. How you doing? So you're supposed to give us your name. Where are you from?
I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, Cape Breton Island.
With the Micmac.
With the Mi'kmaq people, yeah, community of 500 people. And I grew up there my whole life. Went to school there, except high school as an officer.
And what I'm asking people is what you feel you'd like to do in ministry.
With ministry, just basically loving people. So just sharing what God did in my life and speaking about that, talking about that, helping people deal with inner healing and deal with issues like such as abuse and drug addiction and identity a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And to help them be in a place where they can experience like the fullness of God and the fullness of who they are and not being ashamed of who they are, no matter what nation or culture you came from. It's an idea
Yeah.
in ministry, and right now I'm going to do that. But to add on worship, I'd want to do dancing just being who I am as a Mi'kmaq person, a Métis
Mm-hmm.
person, because I come from two different First Nations.
Sounds like you have a full life.
Dorothy, I'm from Manitoba, and I really want to work with kids from off the street and women who've been abused and former prostitutes and just in orphanages and places like those.
Okay. Great. How are you?
My name's Erin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally from Montreal, but I'm from Sherbrooke. As far as ministry, not really sure, but I'm passionate about traveling, and so I'm thinking maybe missions, and with that, teaching, mentoring, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. I appreciate that. Ah. John.
Jon.
Okay.
That's my sister.
Okay. From Mississauga. Okay.
And what I would like to do is take over youth, because I'm going to England in September. And I would like to take over the youth group there and hopefully start a house of prayer, and then one day I want to be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Daddy-O.
Super. So thanks, everybody. Hopefully I'll be able to... What's that? The cameraman. Yeah, I know what you're doing. All right. So, yesterday we went to Sheol, Hades, and we ended up in hell. So that's not good. Let's go to heaven. And someone asked the question yesterday, so the people who die now, are they in heaven? And the answer is yes and no. And we'll see why as we look. You know, as I said yesterday, people have a lot of very strange ideas about death and what happens to us after death. You know, you hear a lot of, since, you know, I've been a pastor for a lot of years, so when you're dealing with people who have loved ones who die, and just to hear what they say, and often I'm dealing with funerals where, you know, the people don't know God, and just to hear what they think about death, you know, and the typical idea that when you die you're going to become this little cute little cherub angel, you know, and they're flying around, and that's what happens to you when you die. All these strange ideas of what paradise could be, you know, and of course many people will say, well, you know, I hope there's going to be a golf course, or, you know, I hope there's going to be great fishing or whatever in heaven. And the interesting part about what the Bible teaches about heaven is that it must be experienced in a resurrected body. Heaven is to be experienced in a resurrected body. R-E-S-U-R-R-E-C-T-E-D. R-E-S-U-R-R-E-C-T-E-D. So heaven's got to be experienced in a resurrected body. It's natural for angels. The way that God created them, they're spirit beings. But God didn't create man as a spirit being. He created us body, soul, and spirit, of course. And so when death happens, it's a very unnatural existence that's going to take place after death. Our soul, spirit, will literally be ripped away from the body, and will then live in an intermediate state waiting for the resurrection. It's going to live in this way that it was not designed to live. We were never created to be disembodied spirits. And so we will be waiting to experience all of what heaven is in a form that's just not natural. Now, those who are in heaven now are enjoying what heaven is right now. And that's why the Apostle Paul says, for me to leave you guys and be with Christ is far better. And he talks about when we're absent from the body, we're present with the Lord. And there's that aspect. This is going to be just glorious. But we cannot fully enjoy what heaven is until we have a resurrected body. Who's in heaven right now? Moses, Elijah, people from the New Testament, Old Testament? Yeah, why would that be? Why would they be there? There's a little hint from something I said yesterday. Yeah, Jesus died on the cross, went to that part of Sheol where the righteous were waiting, and he brought them with him. He took captivity captive, it says. So, we're going to have a reconstituted body. Your body and soul will be joined together, and Christ's body becomes the prototype. Okay? So Christ's resurrected body becomes the prototype. So we're going to read some verses. Somebody look up Luke 24, 36, 46. The references are there. Someone look up John 20, 19, 20, 26, 27. And then someone look up 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 14 to 17. Sorry? I don't. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any others here. Okay. So now you need one. Okay. All right. So somebody read Luke 24. Luke 24, yeah. Verse 36.
And just as they were telling about it, Jesus himself was suddenly standing there among them. Peace be with you, he said. So the whole group was startled and frightened, thinking they were seeing a ghost.
Right down to 46.
Thinking they were seeing a ghost. Why are you frightened, he asked. Why are your hearts filled with doubt? Look at my hands, look at my feet. You can see that it's really me. Touch me and make sure that I am not a ghost, because ghosts don't have bodies as you see that I do. As he spoke, he showed them his hands and his feet. Still, they stood there in disbelief, filled with joy and wonder. Then he asked them, do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he ate it as they watched. Then he said, when I was with you before, I told you that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and in the Psalms must be fulfilled. Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures, and he said, yes, it was written long ago that the Messiah would suffer and die and rise from the dead on the third day.
Okay. The fact that Jesus rose from the dead is obviously the biggest, most important doctrine about Christianity, right? The resurrection, the bodily resurrection of Jesus stamps Father's approval on everything he said and did. I mean, it'd be real easy for anybody here, any of us here in the room, to say, okay, I'm going to die, and 3 days later, you just watch, I'm going to rise from the grave. It'd be real easy for any of us to say that. Now, for that to actually happen, though, and this is what Jesus kept on saying, right? That he was going to rise 3 days. So it's just, the resurrection is what's really important in that whole story of Christ dying on the cross. If Christ dies on the cross and doesn't rise again, hey, it's all over. We've got nothing to preach. We've got nothing to say. So it's his bodily resurrection that becomes the real important part of what he preached about as far as our salvation. Now, the important thing is that he did have a body when he rose from the dead. Lots of people in different religions and cults say that, well, Jesus, when he rose from the dead, it was just really like in a spirit form that he rose from the dead. But the verses we just read say the exact opposite. Jesus is saying, wait a second, come and touch me here. Spirit doesn't have flesh and bones like you see I have. And then he eats something. And his body wasn't in the tomb, although, others would say that, well, it had been stolen and whatever. But he was in a bodily form. And so the fact that Jesus was in a bodily form, he was resurrected, and now the Bible teaches that all of us who believe in him will have the same experience. That he is the first one from the dead. He's the first fruits. He's the firstborn of the dead. And now we too will all have that kind of resurrection. Okay, John chapter 20. Someone read verse 19, verse 20, verse 26, verse 27.
But in fact, Christ had been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For as by man came death, for as by a man came death, by a
Now we're looking for John.
Oh, this is First Corinthians, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else got John? Yeah, go ahead.
On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, when the doors locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and sides. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe."
Yeah. Okay. So once again, Jesus is trying to offer some proof to Thomas, who's saying, there's no way Jesus is alive. And so he says, well, come and just put your hands right in the nail prints here. And why don't you just stick your fingers right in my side, Feel the flesh that's there. And you know how I died, and you knew that there was a sword put in my side. Well, the gash is still there. Isn't that cool that when Jesus rose from the dead, that all of the other injuries that he had, because he was absolutely tortured, beaten up, massacred, right? His back was a bloody pulp. They'd ripped the beard out of his face. In Hebrews, in Isaiah chapter 52, it says that he was so disfigured that he didn't even look like a man. Because you can imagine, they put, you guys had, when I came in, you guys were wearing the blindfolds. They blindfolded him, and the soldiers took turns, it says, punching him in the face. He was slapped. And there's another verse that says that they took turns driving him in the face with their fists while he was blindfolded and saying, "So prophesy, who hit you?" That was their game. Then after that crown of thorns had been jabbed into his scalp, they took the staff that they had given him to mock him as holding a scepter as a king, and they took it and they smashed him on the head with it upon that crown of thorns. So these are the kind of physical sufferings he he was enduring before he even went to the cross. But when he rises from the dead, all those wounds are gone, yet the nail marks are in the hands and the feet and the gash in the side. As if to say, here's the proof of who I am. If the disciples needed any proof, more than what they had already seen. And we'll still see him in heaven that way. There will still be those nail marks and that gash in his side when we see him in heaven, because this is what his resurrected body looks like. And that's the body that rose up into heaven. And so, do you want to start reading 1 Corinthians 15? You still have it there? Verse 20.
But in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For as by a man came death, by a man has come also the resurrection of the dead. For as Adam will die, for as in Adam all die, also in Christ shall all be made alive.
Yep.
But each in his own order. Christ in the first fruits, and that then at his coming, I don't know why I can't read this, those who belong to Christ.
Okay, verse 37 and 38, the same chapter.
And what you sow is not the body, but is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, each to each kind of seed its own body.
All right, now verse 42.
So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable, what is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness and raised in power. It is sown in a natural body, it is raised in a spirit body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body.
Okay, we'll pause right there and then continue on in a second. All right, so what he's saying here is that, all right, there's a resurrection, and all through 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the whole chapter is talking about resurrection, the whole thing, all right? And you got this really weird verse in there, around verse 30, 31, talking about why do people get baptized for the dead if there's no resurrection? What? Why do people get baptized? That's what the Mormons do. Do you know that? Yeah, they baptize themselves for people who are already departed, who weren't Mormons. And they're baptizing by proxy to bring them into faith. And they take it from this verse. All right? That's not at all what it's talking about, but the whole chapter is talking about resurrection. So, and I talk about, Jesus resurrected, and then you've got this whole interesting presentation by the Apostle Paul, where he talks about, okay, so Jesus is the first one, and he talks about that there will be others who will be resurrected, and then he starts talking about the resurrected body itself. And he says, if resurrection is going to happen, it's like a seed which goes into the ground. And that seed has to what? Jesus said has to die, right? And what's sown in the ground, that body, that seed that's sown in the ground, does not compare to what's going to come out of the ground. Right? You take a seed, any kind of seed, and then you look at the plant or the tree that came from it, and you went, what? How can that be? I mean, that acorn doesn't look like an oak tree, but that whole tree came from this acorn? And this is what the Apostle Paul's saying, that there is a spiritual body that will come from resurrection. That our physical body that is sown in death will come up as a resurrected body, and it's going to be so much more glorious. Okay? So that's basically what the whole passage is talking about. Let's go and finish it now, from 46 down to 57.
from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. And
Speaking of Jesus. Okay, go ahead.
as was the man of dust, so also are those who are of the dust. And as the man of heaven, so also are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we shall also bear the image of the man of heaven.
Yeah. Okay, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Who's got that one? Yep.
Since we believe that Jesus died and was raised to life again, we also believe that when Jesus returns, God will bring back with him the believers who have died. We tell you this directly from the Lord. We who are still living when the Lord returns will not meet him ahead of those who have died. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a commanding shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God. First the Christians who have died will rise from their graves. Then together with them, we who are still alive and remain on the earth will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Then we will be with the Lord forever.
All right, so there's quite a bit of teaching in the New Testament talking about how we're going to rise from the dead. So God didn't want it to be something that we were not sure about, what happens to us after we die. There is this glorious resurrection that we're going to know, and our bodies will be transformed. The prototype is Jesus, and we will live forever in a resurrected, glorified body. Okay, now, where's that going to happen? The next point here is the new heavens and the new earth. That's where we're going to live in a resurrected body, the new heavens and the new earth. Now, the idea of a renewed earth, a recreated earth or renewed heavens, you see it in a lot of passages in the Bible. So let's look at a couple of those again. Somebody look up Isaiah 65. You see the passages there? Just a couple of lines down. Isaiah 65, 17. Someone look up Isaiah 66, 22. Someone look up 2 Corinthians chapter 5. I've got Romans 8, so someone look up 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1 to 5. Somebody look up 2 Peter chapter 3, 10 to 14. And somebody else, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 10 to 12. All right? So who's got Isaiah 65? Yep.
For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things will not be remembered or come to mind.
All right, chapter 66, verse 22.
Surely as my new heavens and earth will remain, so will you always be my people, with a name that never disappears.
Okay, that's interesting. That's the Old Testament. And God's talking about creating a new heavens and a new earth. This is the Old Testament. I'm sure a lot of the people back then were wondering, what in the world is Isaiah talking about here? Because there's not a lot of teaching about it in the Old Testament, but it's there. Okay, I'm going to read Romans chapter 8. It says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, we have the first fruits of the spirits. We groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies." So our souls have been redeemed, and the Apostle Paul says there's going to be a redemption for the body. All right, let's keep going on 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Who's got that? Yep.
For we know that if the earthly tent which is our house is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For indeed in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven, inasmuch as we, having put it on, will
Yeah. So we have an earthly tent. It's going to be torn down, and we're going to put on an eternal one. The Bible says we're going to put on an eternal one. All right. The last one the second last one, 2 Peter, verse 3, chapter 3, verse 10. Who's got that one? Yep.
But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything then in it will be laid bare. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and meet its coming. That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with this promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth, where righteousness dwells. So then, dear friends, since we are looking forward to this, make every effort to become spotless, blameless, and at peace.
Yeah. So that's an amazing passage, isn't it? How things are going to burn up, but there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. All right. Last passage is, where am I here? Hebrews chapter 1. Yeah, go ahead.
And you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hand. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like a robe, you will roll them up. Like a garment, they will be changed. But you are the same. And your years have no end.
Okay. So the whole idea about a new heaven and a new earth doesn't mean that there was some kind of like inherent lack in what God first created. Because remember when he created, he said he looked at it and he saw it was good, right? So it's not because there was some lack in the creation, but it's because of the curse that became on creation due to sin. Now, once sin is no longer around and the new heavens and the new earth are created, then there is no more curse. So, cursed is the ground because of you, God said in chapter 3 of Genesis. Cursed is the ground. The ground is cursed. So the actual earth that we're on is living under a curse because of sin. So there will be a new heaven and a new earth that will no longer be subject to any kind of a curse. So, when we're talking about new heavens and new earth, we talk about the New Jerusalem. All right? Now, we're going to read a couple of verses here, and then we're going to look at what the New Jerusalem is going to look like. So, let's all turn to Revelation chapter 21. So John has had this great tour of the heavens, and he's seen what's going to happen during the Revelation. He's seen all these judgments that are coming. He's watching this great 3D film that's going on before his eyes. Everything's going to happen on the earth. And then after all that happens, he says in chapter 21, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Okay, let's go down to verse 9. So this is the description of the New Jerusalem. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And the angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length. That's about 1,500 kilometers. And as wide and as high as it is long. The angel measured the wall using human measurements, and it was 144 cubits thick. That's, depending on what the measurement here for the cubit is, that was about 144 feet, or it could have been about 210 feet. Okay? The wall was made of jasper. The city is made of pure gold, as pure as glass. The foundation of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. Can you imagine the size of the oyster? The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Okay, and let's go to just read a couple of verses at the beginning of chapter 22. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. And on each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. There will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. Okay, so that's the description of the New Jerusalem. That's where we will live in resurrected bodies. We read yesterday in chapter 20 of Revelation that everyone is resurrected. Every person who has ever lived on earth will be resurrected. And there will be a judgment for those who believe in Jesus. And that judgment will be for our works. We covered this in Essential Doctrines 1. Okay, so if you haven't taken that course, I think it's supposed to be available online at some point, and you really should just, if you're not here to take it, just go online, because we look at some really important basic doctrines. And that resurrection that will happen for all believers, we will all stand before Christ. And there our works will be judged that we've done for the Lord. And things that were done out of a wrong motivation, they will be burned up like chaff. And those things that we did for Jesus out of a heart that was for him, those things will remain. And the Bible says he will hand out his rewards for those things that we have done for him. Then there's the judgment that comes for all those who will be judged for sin. Aren't you glad that because of Jesus you're not judged for your sin? The only thing you're judged for are your works, because he took the judgment of your sin. But the resurrection of those who have come out of Hades to be judged for their sin will happen. And then right after that, after death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire, that's when John says, then I saw the New Jerusalem. There's a new heavens, there's a new earth, and there's a new Jerusalem. And this city, if you would, is where we will dwell. Now, it's called the bride in many verses that we read. It talks about a city in that people belong there, and it's the city that Abraham sought for. If you look in Hebrews chapter 11, this is the place that Abraham, he kind of knew that there was a city he was going to be going to, and he was seeking for that city. Believers today, they anticipate that city. That's in Hebrews as well. And this new Jerusalem is kind of like what the old Jerusalem was supposed to be and what Jerusalem will never become. Like Jerusalem on earth can never be all that was prophesied in the Bible. So it's the new Jerusalem up against the old Jerusalem. It's the holy city, it says in the passage we read, because the old Jerusalem is often spoken of as the idolatrous city. And if you look in Ezekiel, the passages I've given you here, in Ezekiel, she's called a harlot, the city of Jerusalem. And in Revelation 17 and 18, you've got like Babylon, who's called like a harlot, because they did not keep their love for God. And so it's the New Jerusalem, it's the holy city, and let's finish off with looking at some of the significant features about the city. What's the city like? Don't you want to know where you're going to live, what's going to be like? You know what I mean? Like if I was saying to you, in 2 years, you're going to be living in Jakarta. You might be interested to find out, I wonder what Jakarta's like. I'm going to be living there. Well, Lord shows us where we're going to be living. Here's what it's like. Okay, so the first thing is how big it is. It's 1,500 kilometers squared. All right? So if we went from Toronto and we went west 1,500 kilometers, where would we end up? Would we be to Winnipeg? Would we get to Winnipeg in 1,500 kilometers? Anybody know? I think so. I didn't look it up, but maybe somebody can look it up. And if we went this way 1,500 kilometers, where would we end up? Probably, say Raleigh. Let's go North Carolina, okay? Let's say Raleigh. And if we went this way, where would we end up? Yeah, maybe Kansas City. That's a big city. When you consider New York City has got, maybe 15, 20 million in the metropolitan area?
All 5 boroughs, 8 million.
Okay, but I'm talking about the outside area too. So 8 million. And it would look on this map, with 15 million, it would look maybe like this. Not even. And there's 15 million people there. That's how many people you can fit in a city that size? A city that size. But it's not only 1,500 kilometers breadth and width. It's 1,500 kilometers high. You think you've seen high rises. You ain't seen nothing yet. This is a massive, huge place. It's called the New Jerusalem. Lots of room for everybody. Yeah, that's, it talks about it's coming down from the heavens. We're not sure how that exactly looks, but yeah.
Do you think that the walls go out from there then? Like from that 1,500 square? And then there's however thick the walls are?
Yeah. Yeah, the walls would be, walled cities, of course, were important in biblical times, but you don't see many walled cities anymore. It's basically talking about defense, and it was also talking about the physical, emplacement of the city. So this here, the walls, we'll look at in a second, but they're at least 144 feet thick. Okay? Remember how thick the walls of Jericho were? Anybody remember? Well, walls of Jericho, the wall itself of Jericho was about 15 or 20 feet thick. And that's why, remember Rahab, the prostitute, where the spies hid in her house? It says that her house was in the wall. There were dwelling places in the wall. And that was, Jericho's walls are 15 or 20 feet thick. There's 144 feet thick walls. This is talking about just how unbelievably massive this New Jerusalem really is. The streets are made of gold. The gold is so pure that as John is looking at it, he can't, how do I describe this? He describes it as pure gold, like it's transparent. It's so pure. He's lacking words to describe what he's seeing. And he sees the walls are of, he's trying to figure out, what is this? It's like jasper, but it's like, again, it's so unbelievable. It's like almost transparent. He's trying to find words to explain what he's seeing. He says the gates are of pearl, and there are foundations all around the city, and these foundations are made of precious stones. So all the things that we look at that are really expensive and rare, I mean, these are paving materials and building materials that would use. You're not going to put up the outside of your house. You're not going to use precious stones. You'll use brick or whatever else, but the unbelievable richness and glory of the city is seen through these things. Okay, interesting that it says that there's 12 gates, all right? So there's 3 gates on each side, and on the gates, there's the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and then inscribed along the foundation are the names of the 12 apostles. So that's talking about Israel and the church, right? So God gave his promises to Israel and the church that came from the promises given to Israel. So both those things are represented there. Again, the walls are 144 cubits thick, 144 feet. A cubit, there's 2 ways to measure a cubit. Anybody know what they are? Not quite a hand length, no. But a cubit was the elbow to the tip of the finger, or, and that was 18 to 20 inches, or the elbow to the hand, and that was supposed to be like 12 inches. And so that was just a quick way of measuring things. And sometimes the cubit that used was the long cubit, sometimes it was the shorter cubit. Here it doesn't say, let's go for the shorter one. Let's say it's 144 feet thick. At this point, what does it really matter? We'll know when we get there, and we can put our hands there, and we can decide how big it really is. It's lighted by the glory of God. That's the light source. There's no more moon. There's no more sun that's lighting this place. It's just the glory of the presence of God. So imagine in a closed room here, we shut off the lights. No more light source. But all of a sudden, the glory of God comes in the room and everything is lit. Well, that's what it's going to be like in the New Jerusalem. We will live the glory of God in that kind of intensity, that he will light every part of the New Jerusalem. No need for a light source besides his presence and the presence of Christ. Of course, the Bible tells us that there is no more curse. The effects of the curse are gone. So there is no more death. No one's going to die. No one's going to grow old. There'll be no sickness, no tears, no sorrow, no mourning, nor pain. All that stuff is gone. Those are the effects of the curse. Those are the things that happen because of the curse. You know, when Satan lies to Adam and Eve and says, "You will not surely die if you eat of this," I just would have loved to have taken Adam and Eve at that point and said, "Oh yeah?" And if we could have just ripped them out of that scene and brought them into 2012 and showed them what was going on. And show them a family crying over a son who's just been lost because he was, shooting up and overdosed, or, someone who's just lost their father to a drunk driver, or someone whose body is being ravaged by some kind of disease, and just say, okay, so who is telling the truth here? Yeah, you will surely die. And that curse is there. But in the New Jerusalem, the Bible specifically says there's no death, there's no sickness, there's no mourning, there's no pain, there's no sorrow. He will wipe away every tear. And the effects of the curse are gone. Neither will there be any wickedness in the city. There will be no more sinning. There will be no more penchant towards sin, because when we have a resurrected body, we will no longer have a sin nature. Because that's what Satan does. He comes in and he tempts us because we have that sin nature. We have that natural penchant for sin. We'll look at that tomorrow. And that's what he's hooking into. But with a resurrected body, that's no longer there. And there is no more curse. And so there's no more wickedness. The presence of evil is gonzo. Can you imagine what that's going to be like to live forever? There's no evil. There's no presence of evil. Yeah.
I think there's still going to be because God gives us free will, and do you think there'll still be some kind of choice, there'll be a tree of life?
The tree of the knowledge of good and evil isn't around. The tree of life is, though. Interesting, the tree of life is still there. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is gone. Why? Because we tasted of that tree. We know what it is. And we've made our choice. We've chosen to say, I'm going to trust God. Now, because of our sin nature, we often blow it, but we know in our hearts that we have chosen God. So there will be opportunity for sure to make choices, because we're still going to be, free creatures. But it's like, hey, I know what I want, and I'm choosing this. And there will be no more tempter. He will not be there. And there will be no more wickedness.
Do you think if there's no pain, do you think there will still be roughhousing and things?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
It won't hurt as much?
The aspects of what our bodies are going to feel are not explained. I would not be surprised that there would be pain, but not pain in the way of anything permanent damage or anything like that. You know? If we're living in a New Jerusalem and, you know, you whack your hand on something, you know, will we not have nerves? I would imagine that the resurrected body still has nerves. But, you know, those details aren't there. Now, we will be in worship and adoration, right? Because it says that we no longer go to church because God is with us and we're in church. Look what it says in verse 8 of Revelation 21.
What was H? No, something like? Does you know?
H? Oh, we're not there yet. Did I put that one ahead of that in your notes? Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. There's no family life as we know it. No family life as we know it. Will we recognize each other? Absolutely. Will I know this was my wife on earth? Absolutely. But there's no family life as we know it. Jesus said that we will be like the angels, no marrying or giving in marriage. All right, so there's no procreation, there's no children coming along. There's no family unit life as we know it today. There's no marrying and giving in marriage. All right. So is the next one worship and adoration then in your list? Yeah? Okay. So sorry, I've given you the wrong... it shouldn't be 8. It's definitely not the verse I want. 22. Take 8 out of there. It should be Revelation 21:22. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. I did not see a temple in the city because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. So somehow the presence of God, this intense presence of God, becomes church. And so the worship and the adoration that we see in Revelation chapter 4 and 5, for example, you know, we'll be living in this wonderful, breathing this wonderful atmosphere of His presence at all times. There will be unbelievable communion with God. What we're going to live with Him. Look at in chapter 21 in verse 3. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. He will dwell with them. They will be His God. God Himself will be with them and be their God." So the whole aspect of this communion we're going to have, basically what Adam and Eve had in the garden, where God would come and walk with them every day, and this was a special moment. Well, here it is in a permanent sense, and even greater. And God's presence in such a palpable way will be there every single moment as we're in the New Jerusalem. All right. It's a place where we will be ruling and reigning, and that the Bible doesn't give a whole lot of explanation about. Just that we're going to rule and reign. We will have tasks to be co-rulers with Christ in this new heavens and new earth. Part of the new heavens and new earth is the New Jerusalem. So, will we be going off to other parts of the earth to rule and reign? Maybe. Will we be going off to Pluto or whatever other planet might be created? Maybe. We don't know. Because the Bible doesn't say that. But it does say that we will rule and reign with Christ forever. What that's going to look like, we're not sure. But that's what the Bible teaches. So it's important to understand that when we get into the afterlife in our resurrected bodies, this is not a time where we're going to be sitting on a cloud somewhere with a harp. Okay? That's not what the afterlife is all about. We will be ruling and reigning. What is that? Think about what that means, to rule and reign. That means administration, that means planning, that means decisions, that means a whole lot of stuff's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. And if God created us the way we are now, and, you know, we're involved doing things and discovering things and all of that, how much more so when we're in our resurrected body? Okay, you've all heard this. Different scientists will use a different percentage, but, you know, scientists say that we use between 3% and 8% of our brain capacity. Okay? So imagine what it could be if we were using 100% of our capacity. So when we're in our resurrected body, we're not sitting in a cloud somewhere playing a harp. We're super intelligent, and we'll be ruling and reigning. There'll be all this stuff going on, because to rule and reign means there's a lot of stuff going on that's got to be well handled and administrated.
If we're ruling and reigning, then who are we ruling and reigning over?
Excellent question. I think we'll be ruling and reigning over ourselves. And there'll be different levels of who's doing what and where. It seems to be part of the reward system that Jesus talks about. Well done, good and faithful servant. You will rule over 10 cities. You will rule over 5 cities. Okay?
Some people like have the teaching of sort of like after, let's say, the rapture, the people that didn't get, let me see if I can start. People that didn't get raptured, but they didn't go into the lake of fire. So like the resistors that didn't I don't know. But anyway, there's a theory that says that we'll be ruling and reigning over them. Could that be possible?
Okay, is there a possibility that after the rapture, and different people have different ideas of what the rapture is and what will happen at that point, but is it possible that we'll be ruling and reigning over the people who were not taken up in the rapture? That's a possibility, except not in this case, because this case is talking about the new Jerusalem. The earth is now, as we know it, is gone. But in the new Jerusalem, it says that we will rule and reign with him forever. Okay? The river of God is there. The tree of life is there. The river of God, you know, isn't it cool? The river of God has always been flowing. Because this reference here is bringing us back to Eden in chapter 22. When you're talking about the New Jerusalem, the fact that there's a river flowing through it, the fact that there's a tree of life, harkens back to Eden. And there was a river flowing out of the presence of God in Eden and split into 4 and went to water the whole earth. And the tree of life was there. So there will be the refreshing presence of God coming from him constantly. And we will always have life. And I can't wait to see what that life's going to be like, because, you know, God gave it, just an example. God gave us taste buds. And when you taste something really good, I mean, it just like explodes in your mouth. Or especially after you've been if you've been fasting for a while, and then and it's like, whoa, like your whole mouth just kind of goes, it explodes with all these things that are tasting these things. You know, so what's coffee going to taste like in heaven? You know, what the things that we're going to taste the things that we're going to do, I think it's all going to be so heightened in a resurrected body. So it's going to be absolutely cool, this life that we have in God and this life that we have in the resurrected body that he gives us. So that's something we can really look forward to. In the meantime, if we die and the end of the world hasn't happened yet, the Mayans say the 12th of December, 2012 or something like that, right? But if the end of the world hasn't happened yet, we will be in glory with the Lord, waiting for the resurrection of our bodies. And the resurrected body is the state, physical state that we live in the New Jerusalem, which the Bible declares as the final heavens. All right? Okay, we're going to take a break and come back. We're going to do something a little different.